Jay Walker. A character who for the longest time was seen to me as, meh, he's pretty good, but not as good as the rest of the ninja. That's where I may have awfully been wrong. The character of Jay is so interesting to me. The stages that he transitions through throughout the show are fascinating and really do give off the impression that the writers have always taken Jay very seriously. Because when you actually look at Jay's character over the entire run of Ninjago, he's probably one of the ninja who's changed the most. He first starts out as the funny guy, and now in Dragon's Rising, we've basically been given a completely different version of Jay for his memory loss, and somehow, both of these versions of Jay still feel like the same character. So, in this video, I'm going to take you through the stages of Jay's life throughout the show, and explain why I think he's become one of the most, if not the most valuable ninja on the team. Now, let's put on our Sensei Wu hats and talk about some Ninjago.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no.
The start to Jay's character was what I thought as a kid as the funny ninja, and honestly, Jay in the first 5 seasons was plainly irritating to me at times. Lots of the jokes he told in the serious scenes just didn't land, and just made me dislike him more than the others. You have Kai being serious, Cole being serious, Zane being serious, Lloyd being serious, and Jay would just have to say something completely stupid in the middle of it. As a kid, I just didn't find it funny. I think part of the problem was that Jay was almost exclusively defined by being the funny one. That's basically what his role was. If something funny needed to happen, Jay would probably be involved. If someone needed to panic or anything, Jay would probably there. If someone needed to make a stupid comment in the worst possible time, yep, Jay's the man. And because of that, I think it was very easy to just look at Jay and think, he's the annoying one. But the interesting thing is that whenever Jay got an episode focused around him, that whole persona would almost disappear. He would suddenly become angry, serious, emotional, and it was actually quite interesting. And this contrast was actually really refreshing to see, because I'd spend most of an episode watching annoying Jay, and then we'd get a Jay-focused episode where he suddenly had actual depth, and I'd think for a minute, wait, is this guy actually really good? The problem was that sometimes it felt like the writers would forget about that development immediately afterwards. Jay would have a really serious moment in one episode, and then be back to being a complete nuisance in the next episode as if nothing ever happened. And that was probably the biggest problem with early Jay. There was clearly potential there, but it wasn't always consistent. Then we get to the worst of Jay, the love triangle. This brutalised Jay and Cole's characters while doing no favour to the actual plot. The love triangle is what made Jay so unbearable to kid me at times. Jay being annoying wasn't enough apparently, so they thought it was a good idea to mix jealousy and anger into it, and honestly it just wasn't needed. I know there were people who really liked the love triangle, and not so fair enough, but for me, it took some of the worst traits out of Jay and amplified them. Instead of Jay being the funny guy who occasionally got serious, he became the jealous guy who was constantly arguing with Cole over Nia, and it just wasn't very enjoyable to watch, especially because Cole wasn't exactly innocent either. It basically took 2 characters who were supposed to be best friends and made them fight over their same person. And the worst part is that after it finally ended, you realise how unnecessary most of it actually was. Once the love triangle wrapped up, it was basically the same old Jay for the next season and a half. Yippee, am I right? Eventually though, this all ended after the 5th season. For the better. The much better. Because from this point onwards, Jay started becoming a character rather than just a role. That's what leads us into what I think is the best era of Jay. I remember on waiting for season 6 to release and being excited for a new Ninjago season to release, as it was the first one I actually ever had to wait for. And all of that excitement dropped when I saw Jay was the protagonist on the poster. The second I saw it, I just thought in my mind, oh, that's it. Oh. From past experiences, I just thought to myself that it would be some serious Jay fighting some ghost thing that I had no clue about. By the way, that ghost thing is Nadekhan, I'm just an idiot. Poor little me had no idea that this was the turning point for Jay that would cement him as such a fantastic character. Skybound aired, and it was phenomenal for me at the time. If you want to see where I'd rank it today, you can click the video up in that top right corner and then you'll find out. Anyways, back to the video. Jay in the first 5 episodes was sort of underwhelming and honestly outshined by the Sky Pirates. This was mostly because the silly plot about him wanting Nia even though they were already together. But the main plot here was in the final 5 episodes. Like mentioned before, Jay at any other time he was the protagonist would usually just have to be serious about everything. But this was different. This was Jay mixing his serious persona with sadness and genuine emotion, something we had never really seen before in his character. That's what made Skybound so important for his character. The best example is in the final episodes when Nia is dying in his arms. Jay doesn't just immediately attack Nadokon and try to destroy him, instead he uses emotion and his care for Nia to outsmart him, and that's something I don't think early Jay would have done. Early Jay would have probably panicked, he would have shouted, he would have attacked, but this Jay thinks. He uses the fact he loves Nia against Nadokon, and this is a massive difference. Jay's emotions are no longer something that make him weaker, they're actually what make him stronger. And I think that's one of the most important things about Jay's character. He is emotional, he cares about people, he gets scared, he gets jealous, he gets upset, but the show eventually learns how to use those traits in a positive way rather than making them the joke, and this continues into Prime Empire. After Unagami takes everything from Jay, he doesn't go and kill him and get revenge. Instead, he uses past experiences and emotion to reason with him and gets him to stand down. The only season ever where the villain isn't defeated by fighting, but talking. And I absolutely love that, because Jay doesn't win by being the strongest ninja. He doesn't win because lightning is an overpowered element or whatever the Jay fans think. He wins because he understands someone else, and that is much more interesting of an ability. The other great thing about this Jay is that he's actually quite funny as well. Not the annoying jokes that didn't land, but genuinely funny interactions with all the ninja that were actually amusing to watch. And I think this is when Jay finally found the balance between being funny and being a serious character. He didn't need to stop being funny to become a better character, he just needed his humour to be actually part of his personality rather than his entire personality. And that's why this Jay is easily my favourite Jay by a mile. This version of Jay is what built the true foundation for the character we have today. He became someone who could be funny, emotional, serious, scared, brave, intelligent, and caring, all at the same time. And that's much more interesting than the funny one. Hey, you! You want to know how I make all of these videos? Go vote on the polls I set up on my post tab. I set them up there to see what you guys actually want to watch from my channel rather than me mindlessly making videos none of you actually like. While you're there, please subscribe. We're getting closer to 500 subscribers, and I appreciate all the support coming my way. Anyways, let's get back to the video. Dragon's Rising has been an incredible way to transform Jay's character in so many awesome ways. The interesting part is the fact he didn't even appear in the first and a half season of the show. We had all of these new characters, all these new stories, and Jay was just completely missing. And then he finally returned, and it wasn't even the Jay we knew. Yet, in the next 4 parts of Dragon's Rising we got him, he was phenomenal. Him losing his memories was weirdly enough exactly what his character may have needed to develop. You see, we saw everything we could have for Jay after crystallized. He'd gone through the funny stage, he'd gone through the emotional stage, he had a relationship with Nia, he had matured, he had experienced basically everything the show could throw at him. And eventually, if they just kept doing the same thing with him, he would have become boring, which is ironic considering that is basically what I thought of him at the beginning. So, the best thing to do was to explore a completely new scenario with Jay. One of the best ways to do that was to reset his character completely. Not permanently, obviously, but give him a situation where he doesn't know who he is anymore. This gives the writers the space to make a whole new Jay who acts and thinks differently. And luckily for us, that's exactly what they did. Jay in Season 2 Part 2 isn't there for very long, but for the time he is there, he's so interesting to me. He doesn't remember Nia or the ninja whatsoever in favour of Raz, who's one of the coolest things in that whole season. Because imagine being Jay, you spent your entire life fighting alongside these people, you fall in love with one of them, you've built friendships with all of them, and then suddenly it doesn't even exist to you anymore. That is such an interesting situation for the character. And then we get the fight with Nia, a scene that was genuinely sad, because from Nia's perspective, this is Jay, the person she loves, but from Jay's perspective, she's basically a stranger, and that's what makes this scene work. There is a complete disconnect between the two characters, and the important thing to note is Jay shattering his goodness here. Him being evil was not on my bingo card if he did lose his memories. I just thought he'd be confused, maybe he'd be manipulated, but actually seeing Jay become a genuinely threatening character was so interesting. Then we get Dragon's Rising Season 3 Jay, and honestly, this is the best Jay in all of Dragon's Rising. My personal favourite of Dragon's Rising Season 3 as well. The whole rogue thing was so good, and I genuinely wish we got more of it for longer than we did, because this version of Jay felt completely different again. It wasn't the same Jay from Skybound, it wasn't the same Jay from Prime Empire, and he wasn't even the same Jay from Season 2. And I think that's why the memory loss storyline worked so well for him. We're essentially watching Jay rebuild an identity he spent years creating. Season 4 Part 1 is where Jay finally got his memories back, and personally I'm not the biggest fan of how the writers did it. I think there could have been more time to build up and a lot more emotional weight behind it, especially considering how Jay had changed during his time without his memories. I would have liked a bit more rogue Jay, a lot more actually, but I understand that Jay getting his memories back fits better for the season and for the wider story, and that's basically where we're at with Dragon's Rising Jay. A completely different version of the character, but one that still feels connected to everything we've seen before. Now, at this point of the video, you're probably thinking, why is Jay the most valuable ninja? This guy just probably clickbaited me, and if you're thinking that, then you're right. Nah, I'm joking. I'm now going to explain why Jay is the most valuable ninja. First off, the title sounded good. Nah, in all seriousness, the reason why is that the development of Jay's character is something we've never really seen before in Ninjago. Jay's gone through so many stages, but instead of completely replacing the previous version of him, the show has slowly added new layers. The funny Jay is still there, the emotional Jay is still there, the serious Jay is still there, and now we have this new version of Jay who's gone through an identity crisis and basically had to rediscover himself. And all of that actually makes him incredibly invaluable to the team, because Jay isn't just one thing anymore, he's basically the glue that holds the team together. His dynamic with Cole and Kai throughout the years is always something based around them acting like siblings. They're laughing on missions, they're annoying each other, they're arguing. But at the end of the day, they're incredibly close, and I think that's one of the most natural friendships in the entire show. Then you have Nia. Obviously their relationship is one of the most important parts of Jay's character, but what's interesting is that their relationship doesn't just exist from romance, it actually gives Jay a reason to care about the team on a much deeper level. Nia is probably the person who understands Jay the most, and Jay is probably someone who's repeatedly shown for how far he'll go for her. Then you have Lloyd. This is probably one of the funniest dynamics. It's usually this awkward relationship, almost like Lloyd doesn't completely know what to do with Jay. And honestly, I feel like young me would have felt the exact same way. I think Lloyd probably looks at Jay and just thinks, why is this guy like this? And I can relate, but that's what makes it work. Jay doesn't need to have this perfect relationship with everyone. He just needs to bring something different to each relationship. And that's what makes him so valuable. He's the guy that can make Cole laugh. He's the guy that can annoy Kai. He's the guy that loves Nia. He's the guy that has this awkward relationship with Lloyd. He's the guy who can understand villains when everyone else wants to fight them. He's also the guy who's gone through some of the biggest personal changes in the entire series. And when you actually look at Jay's entire character arc, it's actually kinda crazy. I went from thinking he was just the annoying, funny ninja, to thinking he might be genuinely one of the best written ninja. And I think that's the biggest compliment I can give to the character, because the writers actually managed to change my opinion of him. Not by suddenly making him overpowered, not by giving him some ridiculous nobility, but by actually developing him. And that's what makes Jay so interesting. We don't know where this character's going next, and after everything we've already seen, I genuinely don't know what the writers could possibly do with him. But that's exactly why I'm excited. We've seen the funny Jay, we've seen the emotional Jay, we've seen the serious Jay, we've seen rogue Jay, and then we've seen post-memory loss Jay, and I just want to see where they take him next. Because if there's one thing Jay's proven throughout Ninjago, it's that you should never assume you've seen everything his character has to offer. So yeah, maybe Jay Walker is the most valuable ninja after all. Or maybe I've just spent 13.5 minutes trying to convince you that the funny lightning guy is secretly the best character in the show. Either way, you watch the video, so I win. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe, because we're getting closer and closer to 500 subscribers, which is absolutely insane to me. And if you want to help decide what videos I make next, go check out the polls on my post tab and go decide whatever you want to see. I've got plenty more Ninjago videos planned, so stay tuned for those. Anyways, that's all from me. I'll see you in the next one. And remember, Jay's the funny ninja. Probably.